Los Angeles is known as the gang capital of America. Over 39,000 members commit an estimated 7,000 violent crimes annually. Once gang members used chains and knives, now they use shotguns, automatic rifles, handguns, and explosives. Once victims of gang violence were rival gang members, now they are often innocent bystanders and residents killed or injured by stray bullets, or charged with crimes they did not commit. Certain gang-infested neighborhoods are frighteningly similar to war zones. And in one of those LA neighborhoods near Pico and Union Streets on a typical Saturday night, 1 June of 2008, for one local resident, a non-gang member named Douglas Espino, he became a victim of gangland violence and terror that threatens to change his life forever. Douglas Espino was convicted on March 13, 2009 on 7 counts of attempted murder and faces a life sentence in prison for crimes he did not commit. He is innocent, and he is a victim of the gangs and the criminal justice system. I'm Steve Murphy, and this is the Insider Exclusive, live from Los Angeles. This is the Douglas Espino story, a young man wrongfully accused, wrongfully convicted, facing life in prison unless justice is done. Today, his family, his friends, and 2 eyewitnesses whose lives have been threatened by LA's most notorious gangs are here as testament to Douglas's innocence. Stay tuned. Douglas Espino can't be with us today. He's currently incarcerated in the Los Angeles County Jail, but I have with me today 2 of his close family members, and I'll introduce them right now. Charlene Rosen Espino, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And Bob Rosen. Bob is her father and an attorney, securities attorney, and Charlene is the sister-in-law of Douglas. Tell us what happened, Charlene, on June 7th, 2008.
Well, on June 7, 2008, Douglas was hanging out with a whole bunch of his friends on the block. His sister Amanda lived a street over from there, so he was always in the area. Approximately around 8:30 at night, there was a couple parties on the street. There's a party to the left, and he was outside hanging out with his friends, and a van drives by, and the driver of the van, sticks his hand out the window and, says verbal things and throws up gang signs representing 18th Street. So next thing you know, you hear conflict saying, excuse my language, but 18th Street. And so it started from there. The van stopped after, he threw the gang signs up and reversed. And before you know it, there's, 2 people that started shooting guns from where Douglas was at in the crowd Douglas was at.
Mm-hmm. And the big issue here is who were those shooters, right?
Yes, and the shooters were Luis Vasquez, which, had admitted to doing the shooting.
He admitted to the police?
Yes, he admitted to the police in his, statement. And the other guy was Sinner, and he goes by the other moniker of Mess.
Okay. Now, this Sinner or Mess, his actual name is Luis Martinez?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And the big issue, and Bob, you can elaborate here, the big issue is Douglas has been blamed for what Sinner or Luis Martinez did. Is that correct?
That's correct. We believe that Douglas was not involved at all, that there were 2 shooters, and the 2 shooters were Vasquez, who admitted to the police that he was the shooter, and Sinner, who had the rifle, had a .22 rifle, and there were at least 3 witnesses who were available to testify about that.
Tell us a little bit about Douglas. You're his sister-in-law. You've known him for how long?
I've known him for about 8.5 years. He's really a good kid. He's had a couple incidents, but not anything major. He's lived with me for a few years.
So basically, he hasn't been in trouble, and you've known him for as long as that, right?
We've known Douglas for about 8 years,
Yeah.
Since he was a small boy. He would spend time at our house. He came over for holidays. He slept at our house on occasion. He got along with the other kids. And he was doing very well in school. He wanted to join the Marines. And actually, we played basketball with him a lot. We had a basketball court at my house.
So it'd be totally out of character for him to pick up a gun and start shooting at people,
It's
right?
not. It
Yeah.
doesn't seem like he'd do that. He was scared of movies, scary
Right.
movies. I don't think he would do anything like that.
On that night, on June 7th, he was with, it's almost a story of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was
Yes.
with 4 other people. One of them was Luis Valdez,
Vasquez.
who's
Yes.
an admitted shooter. Another one was this Senator or Luis Martinez. There were a couple of other friends. And when this van drove by, I read the preliminary testimony, and the driver of the van stated that he didn't say anything to anybody or didn't make any gang signs or whatever. Somebody's lying here, aren't they?
Yes.
Why do you think they're lying?
Because it's between 2 gangs, and of course, them being the victims, they just, want to say who it is. So, they get in trouble for it. But the whole thing is,
Yeah.
they're mistaking the wrong person. It's not Douglas, it's the other guy, Luis Martinez.
Right.
And
And the 2 gangs are the 18th Street gang, correct?
yes, correct.
Which has thousands of members in Los Angeles, and the other one is the Burlington gang?
Yes, and the 18th Street gang in Los Angeles is actually one of the biggest gangs right now in Los Angeles,
Okay, now they go around and threaten people, don't they?
all the time.
You attended every day of the trial, and Douglas's trial was it in April?
Yes,
And it was how long?
it was in March.
March. How long was the trial?
It was 2 weeks.
2 weeks. At that trial, there was some intimidation
Yes,
by gang members in the courthouse? And you reported this to the sheriffs?
yes.
What kind of intimidation was it?
I was walking down the hall to go in the courtroom, and I was always on time or earlier.
Yeah.
And as I was walking down the hallway, 2 of these gang members take out their camera phone and take a picture of me. So right
Yeah.
away, after I heard the phone, like if you're taking a picture,
Yes.
I heard the noise, and I kind of, I looked back and looked at them, and they put their phone right in their pocket. So I went inside the courtroom and told the sheriff, and they just went out there and spoke to them and said that they saw their camera phone, but there's no pictures on there. So I don't know if they could have erased them.
So the sheriff actually asked these gang members, and you know them to be gang members, right?
Yes.
They asked them to see their phones, and they showed them?
Yeah, and they had Burlington tattooed on the back of their neck and tattoos representing Burlington Street all over their body.
There are, I've read, 30 to 40 Burlington gang members in Los Angeles.
Yes,
Pretty small.
active gang members.
Pretty small gang.
Yeah.
And Luis Martinez, otherwise known as Sinner or Mess,
yeah.
is one of those active members.
Correct.
After your brother was arrested and Luis Valdez was arrested, I understand that he took off to Mexico. Is that correct?
Yes, the day after the incident happened, he found out that Douglas and Luis Vasquez got arrested,
Yeah.
and so he fled right away to Mexico.
Yeah. Luis Valdez, I understand, one of the admitted shooters, has changed his testimony a number of times, correct?
Yes, correct, a lot.
I think you've told me that he call someone and state that he and Sinner were the shooters?
Yes, he did.
Who did he call?
He called Douglas the next morning.
He called Douglas.
Yes.
The next morning, Douglas and Luis Valdez got together, didn't he?
Yes.
Again, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, right?
Correct.
They were on a bus, and someone identified them as getting on the bus, and the police arrested them, correct?
Yes.
And he's been incarcerated ever since, right?
Yes.
I understand that the other shooter, Luis Martinez, Sinner,
Yes.
he's back in Los Angeles, correct?
Yes, correct.
Now, the police were notified that he was the real shooter, correct?
Correct.
He's going around bragging about it. What are they doing about it?
Nothing. They're doing
Nothing.
absolutely nothing about it.
As a lawyer, Bob, and not a criminal defense lawyer, there's some legal issues that I know that greatly trouble you. For example, why don't the police follow up to find the real shooter?
Yeah, it's not just a police issue, it's a prosecution issue also. I mean, district attorneys are supposed to do what it takes to get the evidence out, whether or not it hurts their case.
Even after a conviction.
Of course, and here we hear, many times we see situations where through DNA or through other means that an innocent person is in jail, and then the police and the prosecution are supposed to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And many times they do, many times they don't.
Right. Both of you, I know, have opinions of Douglas's defense attorney. Mark Bledstein. Is that his correct name?
Yes.
Yeah. What is your opinion of how he handled the case, how he represented Douglas?
He didn't defend Douglas the way he was supposed to.
Okay.
The family feels that they've had a great loss. Not only was Mark telling us he had all these eyewitness experts to, come and testify on stand, they were never there.
Okay, when you say eyewitness experts, these are people, because I remember reading his motion,
Yes.
that would come forward and say eyewitnesses are not always the most credible people in the world, correct?
Correct.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Did they show up?
No, they
How-
didn't.
Why not?
We were wondering why too. He mentioned it a couple times that they would come,
Yeah.
and they never showed up. We never seen these people. I don't even know if they truly exist.
Now, one of the things I read in your narrative was that he failed to cross-examine some of the prosecution witnesses on some of the testimony they gave, which was conflicting at different times. Is that right, Bob?
Well, I wasn't there. Charlene was there, and
Yeah.
Douglas's mother was there, but that's my understanding.
Okay.
Also, the big question is, why didn't Douglas testify on his own behalf?
How is Douglas? I mean, he's innocent, right?
Yes.
Did he want to testify and Mark refused to put him up, or
He
what?
wanted what was best for him. So,
Yeah.
as trusting Mark being his attorney, he felt like he can ask him, the question,
Yeah.
and Mark said not to testify, so he felt comfortable with it and didn't testify. And it was basically he trusted Mark, giving him the right choice, and Mark didn't do anything to defend him in any kind of way.
There were 7 people in that van.
Yes.
2 of them who were shot, that have identified Douglas as a shooter. Okay, I've talked to you about that, and you've stated that Douglas and Sinner Martinez look relatively the same. Is that correct?
Correct.
And in what ways do they look the same?
Their height, their weight, their haircut, they actually both have really big ears. Identical. The only thing, if they were standing side by side, with their back toward you,
Yeah.
the only way you'd be able to tell them apart is because the other guy, Mess, has tattoos and Douglas does not have one
Yeah.
tattoo.
From their point of view, if they have 7 eyewitnesses, or if they have 7 people naming him, they look at it as they kind of got a sure case, even though they may be wrong, correct?
Correct.
By the way, those 7 witnesses, they're all the same family, aren't they? The driver is the father, the mother was sitting in the driver's seat, and there was some kids in the back. What do they have like?
They weren't kids. They were the driver's brothers.
Yeah.
They were older, which are a part of the 18th Street gang also.
So they were driving. Now, I also understand that this shooting might have been in retaliation for another shooting that took place 2 weeks before that. Are you aware of that?
I heard, but I don't know too much about it.
Okay. What other legal issues do you think that Mark Bledstein should have addressed that he didn't?
Well, I think one of the big issues is why didn't Douglas testify, like we
Yeah.
mentioned. And here you have a kid who has never been in any trouble with the law as an
Yeah.
adult, maybe a few skirmishes as a juvenile, which does not come in.
Right.
And admittedly, it's a tough call to whether to let your client testify when you're a defense lawyer. But in this situation, I think since there was no one there to testify that Douglas was not the shooter, not one person testified that Douglas was not the shooter, that Douglas had to get up and say, I did not,
Yeah.
I do not have a gun, I
Sure.
never had a gun, I did not shoot the gun. And then there were other witnesses also that were not put on, who were willing to testify that Douglas was not the shooter.
Were those witnesses, they were subpoenaed by the court?
My understanding is that there were two witnesses who were part of the other 5 who were present.
Yeah.
And because, like Charlene said, they were intimidated. They showed up earlier at court, they were intimidated, but they refused to come. So the question is, what does the defense attorney do in that case?
Yes.
To ensure that his client gets a fair trial.
Right.
And obviously, someone fell down on the job because they didn't show up, and no one testified that Douglas was not the shooter.
In this kind of situation, like we have today 2 key witnesses that are going to be giving their testimony. But if you live in the neighborhood, your life is really at risk, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
You are married to Douglas's brother,
Yes.
who is originally from that area, correct?
Yes. I just wanted to say one other thing. When I had called Mark to let him know that our witnesses were in a lot of danger, I called him to tell him, you know, our witnesses were held up at gunpoint and everything, and Mark told me to call the police. And so I did. And the police had told me, you have to, you know, arrange this with your attorney. So I called Mark back to tell him, you know, the police said I had to arrange it to you, and he was just very sarcastic.
Yeah.
And very rude.
It's kind of like this entire case is kind of like a situation where, like, who cares, you know?
Yeah.
You know, and unfortunately Douglas was in the wrong place at the wrong time, but he's innocent, and that's why
Yes.
we're doing this
Yes.
program. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to bring some of those eyewitnesses
Okay.
on, and we'll bring you back again. We're fortunate to have two witnesses come forward. They are silhouetted to protect their identity for purposes of this show. We will call them Juan and Hector. One of you is an eyewitness, and the eyewitness I'm going to address this question to. Tell our audience what happened that night. What did you see?
Well, it was a late night. Me and a couple friends had talked about meeting up with other friends right there on that same block. But everybody decided to ride their bikes, and I didn't want to ride my bike. I didn't have a bike. So what it was as I was walking through, I crossed the street, coming through 14th, and that's when I heard the commotion. You know, I heard someone yell out, you know, "Fuck, fake teen" or whatever it was, and I looked over and I was able to see the shooter who shot the first shots.
Who was that?
Sinner, they call him Sinner.
His actual name is Luis Martinez, isn't it?
As far as I know, his mess.
What type, when you say a shooter, what type of weapon did he have?
He had a .22. It was a rifle.
Okay. What else did you see?
Well, as soon as he started shooting, the van took off. And as soon as the van took off, I saw Douglas running across the street.
With a gun or without a gun?
Without a gun, just running. As I saw Sinner shooting towards the van. And after that, I ran inside scared to avoid any confrontation with anyone.
So you actually saw Douglas without a gun.
Yes.
You saw Sinner, as he's known, who's a Burlington gang member, firing a .22 rifle at the van, correct? There is, as you know, there is another admitted gunman, Luis Valdez. I believe that's his name. Vasquez. He is the admitted gang member that was convicted along with Douglas. And why have you not come forward with this information before?
It wasn't until I heard what was going on and that an innocent life was going to spend the rest of it behind bars. So, I mean, that night I hid to have nothing to do with it, but I had to come up because everybody, even my own friends, were telling me what was going on.
What would happen to you if the other gang members, Burlington gang members, of which Martinez or Sinner, AKA Sinner, knew that you were coming forward now? Is your life in danger?
It's not so much my life, it's everything I love, my family. I mean, sure, I fall in there, but my number one priority and the first thing that popped into my mind the night was my family.
In other words, are you married?
No, I'm talking about.
Your mother, your father, relatives like that, they would go after them.
Yes.
And what would they do to them?
Kill them.
Kill them.
Shoot them.
Now, my other silhouetted guest has spent a lot of time in the neighborhood, correct?
Yes.
Tell us what you've learned by just being in the neighborhood. What have you heard?
Well, what I heard is it's a couple of different stories of what happened. But the original story that I know is because I talked to Douglas the night that it happened, and he was able to inform me that who shot, what happened.
He told you.
He told me, and I seen him the day after that too.
And who did he tell you?
He told me the Sinner. I guess he was new to the gang or something, and I guess he was putting in work for his gang. And yeah, he told me, he explained to me his experience of it, you know, so that's how I know for sure Douglas was not there.
Let me ask you this. Would you be willing, if you could be some way protected, to come forward with this information so the police or the court would maybe stop the proceedings and give him the trial that he deserves?
I think if the right precautions are taken, well, I don't see why not.
I'm very fortunate here to have with us Douglas's mom and his sister. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Maria, thank you for coming. Why do you think that there are 7 people in a van that I've identified him as a shooter? Why do you think that Douglas is being set up like this? Why do you think they're blaming him?
Because he's always been skating around that area. He has friends in that area.
Yeah.
They seen him so much there. That's why. I guess they always seen him there, and they guessed it was him because they seen him in that same area where everything happened.
Yeah. Ask your mom if she wants to send a message to Douglas right now. What is?
Que si le quieres mandar un mensaje a Douglas ahorita, ¿qué es lo que quieres decirle?
Sí, yo quiero mucho a mi hijo, lo extraño
Como que estás
mucho.
hablando con él.
Yo quiero mucho a mi hijo, lo extraño mucho. Yo quiero estar con él como lo he estado. Me hace mucha falta cuando estoy comiendo, me hace mucha falta cuando voy a dormir, me hace falta cuando yo voy a la tienda, me hace falta en todos lados donde mi hijo.
What is she saying?
That she thinks about him every time she sits down on the table
Mi hijo me hace
eat.
mucha falta.
or anywhere she goes. She misses him because she's so used to his company. And she misses him so much, and she wants him here with her as soon as possible.
Well, hopefully with this, hopefully this will send a message to correct the injustice that's being done to him.
I hope so too. He's suffering so much. He suffers so much in there.
I am also pleased to have with us Douglas's brother, Eddie.
Hi, how you
welcome
doing?
to the show.
Good,
And
thank you.
Charlene, welcome back.
Thank you.
You were a gang member before,
Yes, I
weren't you?
was. Yes, I was.
Tell us a little bit about gang life and kind of explain to our audience. Douglas was not a gang member, is he?
No, he wasn't.
So he's gotten kind of wound up in this whole thing, and he's being blamed for something he didn't do.
Yes, he was.
Tell us from your perspective. You know, you were a gang member before, and you were a member of what gang?
Temple Street?
How do they think? You know, why is he being blamed? What's your idea?
Well, my idea is my brother's getting accused of something he didn't do, because being a gang member, you cannot go and, and say, oh, he was the one who did it, there's no rat as considered as a rat, putting it out there how it is. And, they're blaming my brother because, my brother was hanging around with the wrong crowd. So when that happened, this big guy that was from, the gang, so they don't want him to get accused.
The big guy, the important guy.
The important guy, the guy that does
the
that.
guy, Luis Martinez.
That's a guy right there.
Otherwise known
Call
as
it
Center
Center or Mess.
or Mess.
A mess.
Now, Douglas is your younger brother.
Yeah, he's my younger brother.
You're 23, he's 19.
Yes. he
And you
is.
have a sister who we just had on,
Yes, Amanda.
Okay, and she's 25.
Yeah, she's fine.
So he was the youngest of the family.
Yeah.
The
so-
baby.
Yeah, so, as dad, I growing up, I teach my brother, not to go on my steps that I have. I always had, told him, he was a sport athlete boy. He was a good kid in school, he was doing real good. It was because, he hung around with the wrong crowd, and that's what happened. Now he's, in jail, something that he didn't even do, getting life, so, it hurts me as my brother, growing up, that I teach him not to go on those steps. And I know he had nothing to do with this. He got nothing to do with this,
If you thought that Douglas really was the shooter, he was guilty, what would you think?
I mean, I would just think, just leave him there. I mean, if he did it, at first I went around the block and
Yeah.
I went walking. I wanted to know the truth out there, because they're not gonna go and tell any cop, any detective. Just, I'm a former, like I said, I was a former gang member. So I went out there and I, searched around the hood, as they call it, around the streets. And I was asking questions, and telling them, if they see my brother that day. A lot of people say they saw my brother that day, but he was not the one who put the trigger. If it was my brother that did it, I would not be doing all this. I would just let him pay his time, let him do his time. I mean, if it was his mistake, or well, just leave him in there. But it's not. So that's why I'm here doing what I'm doing to, help my brother out, get out of jail, because he's an innocent guy in there. I mean, I did the most I could. I asked everybody, and everybody told me they just had the wrong guy in there.
You did your own investigation.
My own investigation. I mean, I'm a familiar. Like I said, like I used to be, a gangbanger. They're gonna come to me first, than they come to LAPD or anybody else.
Right.
So I mean, they're gonna talk to me first than anybody else.
Okay.
So I mean, that's why I know for sure that it was not my brother. If it was my brother, I would just leave him there. They don't do his time. They don't pay what he did.
Right.
But it was not him. So I'm, I'm fighting, and to make sure that my brother comes out. They have so much people in there innocent, innocent people in there that, the justice system don't care. Just let them be there and rot in jail for no reason, no case. I mean, it's all corrupted, it's all corrupted.
Well, that's a good message, and I appreciate your honesty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, and thank you for helping us out.
We've listened to a lot of Douglas's friends, his relatives, and we have come to the conclusion that Douglas is very innocent, and he has been charged with a crime and convicted of a crime that he didn't really do. And I'm going to sign off on this show by having Bob and Charlene basically address a question. What do you want to see done?
Well, what I'd like to see done with Douglas is that he needs a fair trial.
Okay.
And obviously,
He needs a retrial.
he should be retried, and those people who should have come forward in the past should come forward now and testify that Douglas was not the shooter, that there were
Okay.
two shooters, and their eyewitnesses testified that Douglas was not one of those two shooters. One of the shooters has admitted that he was the shooter to the police. Apparently, this did not come out at the trial. The other shooter fled to Mexico. He's now back, and he should be arrested and tried instead of Douglas.
Charlene, what do you want to see done?
The same exact thing my father had said. A new trial, which should be fair. I mean, Douglas is getting charged with something he did not do, and it's not fair to him.
Well, I want to thank you both for, you're a family that's definitely supporting a guy that's been wronged, who shouldn't be in jail. And hopefully this show will alert people to make those changes. I want to thank you for being on the program. Thank you for spending your time, and thank you, Charlene. Thanks for watching. If you'd like more information about these important issues and all of the guests, please visit www.insiderexclusive.tv or legalshowtime.com. Thank you.